This is something that I wanted to do Monday, but was going to do that after the first week in the NFL and all the college football stuff. I want to talk about Lamar Jackson's contract. All right, the headline is Lamar doesn't have a new contract. There's multiple theories on this. The headline could be Ravens make offer. The headline could be Lamar wants historic contract. But we know right now the season starts, terrific quarterback, guy has an MVP, he doesn't have a new contract. So what's going on? Multiple theories on why that is. One was that he doesn't have an agent. We're going to get into what the offers really are and what was reported. I don't know that that's necessarily the case. For some people, there's times where, I don't like to compare my experience with agents to somebody who's an NFL MVP. So maybe I just don't. I don't know. There are times, though, I think if you're a person that has representation, you're in a field that has representation, there's times where you probably didn't need one and maybe you're paying too much for it. Sometimes you're definitely paying too much for it. And then there's other times where you're like, this is this opportunity that comes along where you're like, oh, this is just better. I also think there's something too that is just to your advantage by having somebody else argue your position, because as somebody who's not had an agent at certain times, so I guess I actually am doing this, it's just weirder when you're telling the person who's in charge of paying people why you should be making more than other people. People just don't really like that. I've been told that straight up in my face. Like, why are you comparing yourself to other contracts? You're just like, because that's literally what everybody does. And I would just be paying somebody else 10% to do the exact same thing. And in this case, Lamar Jackson is comparing himself to other quarterback contracts because that's the way business works. And it's what Lamar should be doing. So I want to go back, as always, and try to sift through all these different theories and land on something that I think is fairly obvious. Because there was another theory, too, that it was like, wait, is the team maybe on the fence about him a little bit? I am a big fan of having an opinion on a quarterback, and then when the team does something with quarterback I either love or don't like, then I can feel validated. I'm on an absolute heater, by the way, of quarterbacks and how I felt about them. And then the team ultimately does something that reinforces everything I've thought about the quarterback. Jimmy Garoppolo getting benched for Trey Lance. Feel like that's a W. I know this hurts Cerruti, but Alex Smith got benched twice for Kaepernick and then Mahomes. You could say, wait, are you kidding me? He got benched for Mahomes. Okay, fine. But he also got benched for Kaepernick. The Kirk Cousins stuff in Washington. Not many of us respect anything that Washington's football team has done over the years. But I'm going to get to Cousins a little bit later when we start talking about franchise tags. I love that Washington was just like, yeah, you put up some numbers, but we just don't think you're that good. And we don't want to pay you. And we're not. And there you go. It also worked out for Cousins. Did not work out for Washington. But those are quarterbacks where I was like, wait, am I right to be hesitant? Will the team do anything that confirms that? And those are just 4 transactional examples that I can give you. And there's a lot more, but I'm not going to get caught getting into all that right now. So let's go back into history and try to figure out what this means. So all we have to do is look at Dak Prescott's contract negotiation. Okay. Before we get to any of the Lamar numbers, Dak, I think, is a good template for trying to figure out Lamar's situation. So Dak and the Cowboys were working on a contract, working on a new deal in 2020. Ezekiel Elliott just got a 6-year, $90 million deal in 2019. I remember as that happened, an NFL source telling me that Zeke's agents knew there was one place that was going to do one of these old school running back contracts, and it was Dallas. And they did it. And they got their money. A lot of guaranteed money in there for a running back. That contract has been a disaster. Ezekiel Elliott isn't even close to being that dynamic anymore. And, if you say they're the only team that would have done it, to be fair, the Rams gave Todd Gurley a contract that made 0 sense at the time as well. So there was a motivation from Dak's camp to go, wait, if they're going to give Ezekiel Elliott running back money from, again, not the total number of money, but prioritize him like a 1990s running back, then we can probably do all right. But at the time, there were multiple theories about why Dak wasn't going to get paid. Chris Sims, who we've had on the podcast, at the time reported that Dak had turned down 5 years, $175 million. That was a $35 million average annual salary. Now, Rappaport, great lighting, refuted this later, but it was refuted based on the tweet that I saw. Rappaport was saying like his agents refute Chris Sims and whatever. It got kind of turned into this stew of who's right and who's wrong. In 2020, although not your main source for NFL stuff, with Chris Long on that podcast in 2020, in the fall, as you were, again, talking about Dak, we're like, yeah, I'd heard he turned down actually like over $100 million in guaranteed money. And there's a big dispute over the fourth year versus the fifth year, and that Dak wants the shorter deal, and he wants more guaranteed money, and he wants to get closer up one of the top guarantees that we've seen in the NFL at that position. I felt really good about that. We shared it. And this isn't one of those, we need to all do a better job of like the layman reaction to like, he turned down $100 million guaranteed, or Lamar Jackson turned down how much guaranteed he turned down. These are special people. Most of us are not. So whenever you're like, oh, you could have just paid, just give me the $100 million. And you're like, no, because no one's offering it to you. No one's offering it to you. All right. So no new deal for Dak in that 2020 fall. Reports about what he'd actually, but it was very clear and it was clear to me based on what I had talked about on the podcast, he had turned down a 9-figure guarantee, but it wasn't enough because he wanted a shorter deal. So what happens with Dak? He plays 5 games, breaks his leg, and it was a bad one. If it was an arm, we wouldn't have cared as much. Breaks his leg. Everyone freaks out. Dak should have gotten paid after the season, March 21st. He signs a 4-year deal, $160 million, puts him above everybody else on average annual salary behind Mahomes, and signs for $15 million less guaranteed than Patrick Mahomes. Everything worked out for Dak. All the theories were wrong. He broke his leg and still got paid like the second highest quarterback contract at that time of all time. Because if you cycle out the timing, which has a lot to do with how quarterbacks get paid, the newest guy, it's not the better guy, it's usually the newest guy gets the better deal. And you can see the way agents will do these in some of the announcements. Like, let's look at Kyler Murray's deal. Kyler Murray's deal was July 22. He had 5 years, $230 million, $189 million guaranteed. Kyler Murray has the second highest guarantee in NFL history. And because there was a weird clause in there that didn't make a ton of sense, people actually felt bad for him on Twitter. All right. Russell Wilson signs in September, and guess what he does? He does 5 years at $242.5 million. Because Kyler's number set a previous number. And the reason Kyler got 230.5 is because Watson got 230 million, but Watson got an unprecedented, and what makes a lot of people feel bad about, the first ever $230 million guarantee because Cleveland wanted him that bad. All right. So let's go back to what we're looking at here with Lamar. Lamar reports before we found out what the numbers were that he wanted a fully guaranteed deal. So he wanted 5 years, and whatever his number was going to be, he wanted that to be just like Deshaun Watson. He feels like, look at me. I've been in the playoffs. I've got the MVP. I think in a vacuum, more people would prefer Deshaun Watson, the football player. That's all I'm talking about here, the football player. But I can understand Lamar's position on this. I'm going to be doing my deal later. All these other guys have gotten paid. I want to keep it moving. Pay me the full guarantee because now we have a precedent for it. So Chris Mortensen, Adam Schefter reported that Jackson turned down 5 years, $250 million. So we're going to push that number way beyond the $230 million, but only $133 million guaranteed. Now, because of Lamar and the way he plays, I've seen this argued. Well, of course, Lamar wants the guaranteed money because look at the way he plays, which I do think, ironically, is an argument to not guarantee him all that money. But $133 million guaranteed. Forget what the average annual salary is. Okay, forget what that is. $133 million isn't going to cut it anymore because as we look at the recent deals, Rodgers, he got all $150 million of his extension guaranteed, whatever, but that's still north of what Jackson would be. Wilson got $160 million of his new deal in September guaranteed. Jackson's under that. Kyler, again, $190 million of his deal. That was in July guaranteed. Watson, as we mentioned. And then Mahomes' deal is just weird. He's 10 years, $450 million. His average annual salary is now below like 5 other guys. That'll clearly get reworked. I don't know that Kansas City would mess with their quarterback and say, hey, we gave you a deal where we all decided that it would get torn up later on, but actually we're going to use that low number to negotiate against you because now we have leverage. Because I don't think they're going to do that with the best quarterback perhaps of all time. So, and again, that's a little early. He's got some resume work to do there. So if Lamar wants to turn this down, that's within his right because it's actually low. The $250 million sounds really exciting. But that's that guaranteed money. This is old news. The quarterbacks are making more and more guaranteed money on the new deals. And you know where it started? It actually kind of started with Kirk Cousins. Because here's the problem for Jackson. He can turn that down. He is worth more. But it's not like Lamar, man, that team doesn't like him. Are there doubts? What's going on? What kind of theories can we come up with why Lamar Jackson isn't being paid? Well, it's because he wants way more guaranteed money than he's being offered. But the Ravens are smart and making the headline part of it be like, wait a minute, it's $250 million. Hey, it's all going to work out. And hey, we're going to do all these different things. He needs more guaranteed money, and that's fine. But the reason the Ravens can offer this is because they have the tag leverage. And that's why I hate the franchise tag, because it prevents true free agency. The non-exclusive tag for Lamar for next year would be $32 million. That means another team can offer him a deal. The Ravens have 5 days to match. The more likely exclusive tag, where you can't do anything except keep him for the 1 year, is $46 million. Now, the tag can work out for the player. They don't like it, but it can work out for the player. You get tagged for 46, you play it out one more year, and then you hit free agency again, unless they wanted to hit back-to-back tags, which is actually what Kirk Cousins did. Kirk Cousins, because Washington kind of liked him, didn't love him. They didn't want to give him that long-term deal. So in 2016, they tagged him at just about $20 million. The next year, they tagged him again at $24 million. And then he was a true free agent because they couldn't do it again. And Minnesota paid him 3 years and $84 million, all of it guaranteed for, I believe, the first time ever, setting a new precedent. If you look at all the years from 2016 to 2023, Kirk Cousins is going to do 8 years, $229 million, where the average annual salary actually dips a little lower than you expect because the early tag years drag that average down. So there's a version of events here where Lamar gets tagged and then hits it again. But this is just very simple. The guaranteed number is too low, even though the new big number would be the biggest ever, and that's how it would be announced. I don't blame Lamar for turning this down. I don't really blame the Ravens for having that leverage. Sometimes you think, do you really want to mess with your quarterback? But that's all this is. And it's just like Dak. And it's probably, if Lamar has a good season, or even if he gets hurt, just like with Dak, he's probably going to get paid. But the Ravens, and apparently Lamar, not in a hurry to get something done that they don't want right now.